Welcome to Beyond the Muscle. I'm really excited to welcome our next guest, Steve Hall. Steve is a coach and the founder of Revive Stronger. He's also a WNBF pro bodybuilder and a judge with the WNBF. So Steve's been coaching and competing for over a decade now, and I'm really excited to delve into some of the insights that he has. So welcome Steve. Really good to chat to you again after all these years. And huge congratulations on getting your pro card too. You looked incredible. How was it being back up on stage again last year?
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind intro. And yeah, it's good to catch up. Obviously, we've known each
Mm.
other for a long old time.
Mm.
Even worked together very, very briefly. That
Yeah,
I
I
sometimes
remember.
reflect upon that, and I'm like, oh, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, back in
So
20.
yeah, those are good times. And yeah, getting back on stage for me, I always take extended off seasons. It's just been a must for me to progress. As you all know, and the listeners will know, natural bodybuilding is like watching paint dry. Like these changes don't happen rapidly.
No.
Though I literally saw the WNBF lightweight pro class winner post up a before and after of like 2 years of like 2022 versus 2024, and he just like I was like, what? This is just crazy. I don't know what the weight difference was, but he looked like night and day difference.
Wow.
Bit of an outlier, probably,
Yeah,
but some
yeah,
people can make dramatic progress in, well, 2 years is a good amount of time still. But
yeah.
for me, I to have climbed the ranks from 2014, my first season, where I was barely challenging at a novice level, to then being able to go pro now last year, I've had to have had those long off seasons. So getting back on stage and like actually the show I went pro at the Netherlands was the first show of the season, and the some of the feedback I got, which is always hilarious, because I did that show as like I don't want to say a warm up because sometimes people don't like people saying it's a warm up, but it truly was, because I was like, I just want to do one so
Yeah.
that when I come to do the WNBF UK, which was my targeted show of like, I want to be my all-time best for that show, so I have a place of being able to qualify for Worlds, which was my goal. I would need to do a show to get the cobwebs off, because I'm always so nervous when it comes to that first show.
Mhm.
And the feedback I got from the judges was, we could tell you were nervous. I
Right,
was like,
right.
damn it. I
Oh
thought I
no.
was like pretty good. But it worked. So every show after that, I kind of get this, I get so much adrenaline going, and I'm so like
Mm.
anxious to perform,
Yeah.
because it had been since 2021. So it'd been a long time since I'd competed. So yeah, I'm like, the worst is when you're trying to hold your quads on and then they're like shaking and you're like, oh God damn it. Like, what am I doing here? So yeah, it
Yeah.
was kind of nerve-wracking, but it was great to be back doing it. And yeah, every season you take away new lessons and it's
Mm.
a different experience. And I kind of fall in love with it a little bit more every time, which is nice.
Mm. Yeah. No, that's great. That's a really cool summary of the season. Did you get nervous this year? Would you say you like less nervous compared to previous years?
For that first show, I didn't have any expectations going into it, but I think it's always just it's just the lack of experience being on stage for so
Yeah.
long. Inevitably, I'm always someone who gets a bit nervous with these sort of things. Like, for example, flying makes me
Yeah.
nervous, or anything new, different, I get nervous. But
Yeah.
once I'd done that first kind of stage presence, I
Mm.
didn't get nervous for my pro debut in
Yeah.
Switzerland. I wasn't nervous at WNBF Worlds.
Hmm.
It was just like, I'm part of it now. I got That's why I say I get the like nerves out of the way with the first show, and then
Yeah.
after that, I'm much better about not being as nervous. But it is that experience cures that anxiety.
Mm.
I even think about podcasting. It
Hmm.
took me years to start not being nervous before episodes.
Right,
I'd
right.
be like, really, it would put me way out of my comfort zone. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not too nervous after the first one. It got better.
It got better, yeah. No, that makes sense. It's experience, isn't it? I guess that's the biggest driver there. How do you think your physique develops? Because you definitely got leaner throughout the season. Did you feel your physique got better and better as the season progressed?
It got better and then worse.
Right, okay.
So I don't know. I think this happens to a number of competitors, especially
Mm.
those who have quite long seasons, and maybe they qualify for things that they didn't like necessarily know they were going to qualify for, and
Mm.
end up extending their season further than they were intending to, or they do what I did, of which me and Cliff, who Cliff Wilson was coaching me this year, which was new and great. But we got to a point where we were both like, it looks like there's a bit more to come off. Let's
Right.
like go for it. And that's part of the reason I wanted to have Cliff, is because in my last season, I got to this point where I was like, should I keep pushing more or am I getting worse by pushing for more
Yeah.
condition? And I made the decision maybe a bit late in that 2021 season still, but to pull back. So I didn't keep digging. Whereas
Right.
this year, me and Cliff kept digging.
Mm,
And it's the hardest I've ever dug. It's the worst I've ever felt.
mm,
And it's only reflecting now, I was really in a hole, like
mhm,
bad.
mm,
And you just get through it. And thankfully, in some way, because I'm not a family man like yourself, I have less commitments. I can really, really prioritize this. So I
yeah.
can feel really shit and still live a life to some
Yeah.
extent. And yeah, we dug and we got more condition for sure, but definitely the ratio of kind of condition to fullness and muscle loss
Yeah.
was not in our favor. So I definitely wasn't my best at WNBF Worlds.
Right.
I was my best probably at the Swiss show,
Mm,
where I got that balance of more condition since Netherlands. It was about a month afterwards, and I shaved off a number of pounds, but not so much that I was kind of flat and didn't have
yeah.
the pop to my physique because yeah, I can't even we depleted to try and make a weight class that we weren't even sure what the weight classes were at Worlds because they didn't tell us beforehand. So we're
Right.
just like, let's try and make lightweights, but we didn't know the cutoff. So we depleted and man, I took a lot off in that depletion, but you could see it on my physique too, where it's like, and especially on my frame, which I don't have favorable genetics in terms of my bone structure and frame. Like I'm not super broad, my waist is quite big, I have a big rib cage, so you could really see it on my
Mm,
physique.
yeah.
So much so we had planned a rapid backload, but we
Hmm.
actually ended up backloading a day early.
Right.
Sorry, started carving up a day early to just be like, we need to get ahead here. And
Mm,
even on the day of rapid backload, my carbs, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're over 1,000 grams of carbs
yeah.
on that day.
Wow.
And it was just like my body just kept taking it, and it
Mm,
needed it. So yeah, the physique got better, and then a little
mm,
bit worse.
yeah. Interesting. Well, I suppose because you'd have had that experience of a few seasons prior where, yeah, maybe there was a case of like, oh, what if I just dug a little bit deeper? And then you've done it this season, so you've had both
Yeah.
experiences now, which is probably a good thing in a way. Good, more data points, I guess. So
It
yeah.
did exactly what I needed, where I kind of knew Cliff would push me out of my comfort zone. Well, I wanted to know, was it a comfort zone or was it a rational decision that made sense to
Right.
like stop digging? And now I can reflect to be like, actually, Steve, you made a rational decision to like call it there. That was fine. But sometimes you don't know until you
Mm,
push, right?
yeah.
That it wasn't maybe the right call, and we just couldn't rectify it through a depletion, and then kind of the backload is always a bit rapid backload, sorry, is always a bit risky because
Mm,
you have such a limited time to bring the physique back to life. But
mhm,
it was very evident in the days after the show when I started eating more, and I was
mm,
just like, Mike Chalice was with me, and we are training in some of these gyms in New York because we managed to like have a bit of a holiday afterwards. We were just like look at each other. I was posing and like under some
yeah.
lighting, and we are like, "What the fuck? Like
Right,
this
right,
is
yeah.
what I wish I had brought to stage."
Oh no, yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it's and even now, post show and like 11 weeks post show, and I'm looking at my physique and I'm like, man, that's the shape and size I got to bring. Like
Mm,
with this, even if it is a bit more body fat, but the amount of extra size and shape and kind of fullness I get is worth that kind of trade off. But
mm,
every year you grow more muscle, so maybe you
mm.
can bring a bit more condition, and that's kind of the goal next time.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a real balancing act, isn't it? And yeah, that's really interesting. That I love that. Um, what got you into bodybuilding, Steve? I'm curious.
So I actually started going to the gym just before I was 16. And I know that because I don't know if it still is, but in the UK, it was like a rule you had to be 16 before you're allowed in the
I
weights area.
think it still is. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's funny that that still
yeah,
sticks
yeah,
around. It's like an old school myth, but
yeah.
I was just because I remember them asking me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm 16 in a few months." So I know
Right.
I wasn't quite 16 when I started, and the reason I ended up going was basically two of the guys that I played football with on like a Saturday football club. They went to the gym, and I was like, "Hang on, why are you going and I'm not?" And
Right.
so I was like, "Right, I'm gonna get to the gym." And I just really enjoyed like exercising. I always have. I've always been very active. Definitely never like. Uh, I think a lot of people get into kind of bodybuilding, whether or not they're like overweight and the nutrition side, and then they get into the gym to like be like, hey, now I'm slimmer, but I kind of want a bit more shape on me. But for me, I was always very skinny. And so it was very much like I want to kind of fill out my frame a little bit. And I
Right.
just loved exercising, to be honest. It wasn't so much about the look necessarily. So yeah, it was that like going with friends. And then it just became like bodybuilders love routine, right? It just became
Mm,
routine. I created a split very quickly where it was like I'll have my free weight day and then cable day. And I just rotate free weights, cables, free weights, cables.
right.
Like don't know, some structure there at least, not particularly
Yeah.
intelligent, but that's actually what got me into the gym. I kind of wish I had a different story, like I don't know, anime. That would be a good one with Dragon
Right,
Ball Z
right.
or
Yeah.
something. But
Yeah.
I didn't really, I didn't really get like inspired by any physiques or anything like that. It was just out of curiosity of my friends going, and then just loving pushing my body and seeing it kind of respond.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Oh, that's really cool. Um, yes, yeah, I'm trying to think of my own story actually. I think I started when I was 16, 17, similar age. And there was like the pre-social media because I'm 40, I'm a little older than you. Um, but I remember when I first got into like bodybuilding, it was like the 2013, 2014 kind of era. And the likes of like 3DMJ, Lane Norton, and then probably like Matt Ogus as well. They were like my big influences back in like 2013. And it was watching their videos that got me into like evidence-based lifting and also kind of wanted me to, maybe dabble with bodybuilding itself. Who who were your biggest influences like at that kind of time? Because I know you kind of got into it at a similar time as well, the whole more bodybuilding side of things.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, those
It's the
names
same people, right?
almost
Yeah,
identical.
yeah,
So, yeah, I got into the gym when I was like barely 16, but actual bodybuilding, I didn't really get into that until well, after university, really, or during my time at university a little bit. I
right.
started perusing kind of online forums, and I was having some supplements, and they had a forum, and so I'd like log progress in there. But it was very like old school, kind of
Yeah.
more like what commonly known as like bro advice.
Mm,
I had like crazy amounts of protein as an intake. I
mm.
can't like it was like over 300 grams, and I was
Wow.
like 150 like pounds, so like 2 grams per pound. It's kind of
Yeah.
ludicrous looking back at it, but it kind of gave me an inkling into what it was all about. And I didn't really get to know like evidence-based bodybuilding until I think it was about 2010 I found it.
Mm,
And that was when I found Matt Ogus, and he then put me on to Eric Helms, and that was
mm.
like 3DMJ. And
Yeah.
I think along the same time, I was commuting to a job, and I remember this because I was reading all of Lyle McDonald's articles on
Yeah.
bodyrecomposition.com. And I
Mm,
came across him because my little forum, they'd sometimes send links from bodybuilding.com.
right.
And then I found bodybuilding.com and I found Alan Aragon, and
Mm,
there'd be Lyle McDonald's articles referenced there. And so then that put me onto his articles. And I loved the way Lyle wrote, and he
mm,
really explained things where I was like, clean and dirty foods is like what I had in my
mm,
mind. And then La like explained flexible dieting and all of that.
mm.
And I was like, oh, wow. And that I have to really thank for. And like Matt Ogus, I think he came onto flexible dieting. He created like the Love Diet. I remember this video
Yeah,
called
I remember
the
that.
Love
Yeah.
Diet Meal Plan. It was hilarious. He basically was just eating things that were fitting his macros that
Mm,
were like tasty and palatable.
yeah.
And I have to thank those guys for that because they made bodybuilding seem much more realistic and sustainable for me. Because I have a tendency to be very extreme and black
Mm,
and white. And so I had gone down like this almost orthorexia type of eating where it was like my foods, take my Tupperware to my like
mm,
family and friends and not eat with them. Whereas when I found kind of flexible dieting, read Lyle's book, saw Matt Ogus, saw like Eric Helms, the muscle and strength pyramids, it was all
mm,
like this world opened of just opportunity to be like, oh, like now it all makes sense. Now I can kind of see through the matrix almost. So
mm,
yeah, I had very kind of similar inspirations to you, and it was Matt Ogus that
mm.
inspired me to step on stage
Right.
because he was documenting his prep, and I was just like, I want to see if I can do that. And
Mm,
I kind of jumped over this element of I had an accident when I was at university and got a head injury
yeah.
and then was on like medication and trying to recover from all of that. And a big reason I competed was to like prove to myself I could take my body to this extreme and
Right.
recover from it after my accident. And I was like, if I can do that, then I've left this shadow of like
Mm,
insecurity surrounding my health behind, and also recovering from that accident and going through that prep. I was just fascinated by how plastic the human body is if you give it the right inputs. you do the right outputs, you
Mm,
can transform it. And I was like, man, I got to help other people do this. And that's kind of
right.
what led me to wanting to do things like the podcast, sharing information, and start coaching and everything like that. So
Mm,
yeah, that's a bit of a summary of how I got into like more evidence-based and
yeah.
actual competing.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's such a cool story. And yeah, yeah. No, I remember going back to the Matt Ogres thing. I think he was actually probably the first one I stumbled across, and then I like, once again found yeah 3D MJ and yeah Lane Norton etc. But yeah, that's really cool. That's a really cool story of getting into it. I wanted to touch briefly on your training, Steve, as well. It's obvious from the way you train and many other like evidence-based lifters, you're spending a lot less time in like the contracted position, and you put in more of your eggs in that the let's say the stretch basket. And yeah, over the last like, year or so, I've definitely adapted the way I train, to and even with like my clients that I PT. The way I describe it is you kind of momentarily touching the top of the range and then returning back down.
Yeah,
Um, how do you feel the kind of that tweaking of the way you train has affected your physique?
it's a really good question. And I've actually been doing it for a long time now. I'm surprised how long it's been. It's been like, I think it's coming towards like 3 years where I've been doing
How's it really?
some element of partial length and partials where I'm doing
Mm,
that, like you said, the kind of focusing on the stretched position for like back and calves. They're the ones I've been doing it longest. And I still use some full ROM, but a lot of it is like, hey, spend as much time in that kind
mm,
of get as many lengthened exposures as I can, for like lack of a better term. And some lifts kind of do that for you
yeah.
inevitably anyway, like a leg press. I tried length and partials on there and I was like, this is just hell.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I just not getting any breathers and no rest. And I think I actually get more lengthened exposure by having that short position included.
Right.
But in terms of the impact, as I mentioned before, as a natural bodybuilder, especially someone advanced who's been training like like as long as we have, a long
Mm,
time,
yeah.
seeing muscle gain and appreciable muscle mass gain is it's slow for sure. But what I can say is an area that I've always felt insecure about and thought was underdeveloped and well was my calves. And that was not for lack of training them. I definitely trained them a lot and uh, doing length and partials on them has definitely made a significant impact.
Mm,
So it's just meant, I think, because when you do a calf raise, it's very hard up at the top for that like peak contraction.
yeah.
So you might fail there, but you have like five more reps in the bottom position. So I think it's just allowed me to actually train the calf to like closer to true muscular failure.
Mm,
And I've just like hammered them and
mm,
not crazy volume, but maybe 20 sets on average across a week. So
yeah.
four times four, five each time. Maybe, yeah, somewhere around 20 sets and doing length and partials. And they've grown substantially.
Right.
Like
Right.
you wouldn't look at me and be like, Martin Lamont type calves, if you know Martin, like
Mm,
craziest calves in the
mm,
natty scene.
mm.
And I don't think he even trains them, which is just
Right.
like
Right.
hilarious.
Yeah.
But they've definitely grown to the point of which where I look at them, I'm like, oh, they're respectable. Like,
Mm,
hey, I'm not embarrassed about wearing shorts like I was
yeah.
before.
Yeah.
For other muscle groups, it's hard. I don't think they've had as significant an impact.
Hmm.
Like my back has always been relatively decent, and a
Yeah.
back is a big area. I've been implementing them. Delts is an area I've been using them a lot, and I do
Mm,
think my delts improved and my back has improved. Do I think that was like I do? I think the length and partials and doing that has helped. I do.
right.
That's why I continue to do it. But I can't say they wouldn't have grown still if I'd just done like full ROM. I just think
Mm,
there's just a little something there that it's
mm,
giving me that little edge.
yeah.
So I'm happy to continue doing it. And ultimately, and I think a lot of bodybuilders do this. Like your intuition can guide you quite well within the
Mm,
gym, and it feels right. It felt wrong at first because I was so used to
right.
doing full ROM and like, oh, I must come down with a pull down to my clavicle, whatever, and like team
Yeah.
full ROMing it. Whereas now it feels right to come down and just, hey, it's getting really sticky here. Like you
Mm,
said, kind of touch that short position and
mm,
then come out and come back up.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I've enjoyed kind of implementing those and kind of still do.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I suppose yeah, for certain movements it just works a lot better than others. I noticed you did it with in fact, in your some of your chest work, you almost exclude that top end, don't you, of range? But
That is not most chest movements have quite a nice resistance profile in that they are hard in that lengthened position and
yeah,
then easier in the short, depending barbell lifts, dumbbell lifts. Some
Mm.
machines, plate loaded ones, they
Mm.
start getting hard in that short position.
Yeah.
And so the triceps kind of fail first. But for me, Martin has his calves, I have my arms.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
arms are definitely a strong, not the, his calves are kind of super freaky, whereas my
Right.
arms are, they're decent. They're not super freaky, but they're decent.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, my chest is an area that gets is decent and it like looks nice, like it gets really lean, but it's not very big and prominent.
Right.
And so I do that I kind of exclusively do length and partials to ensure my triceps don't kind of get much and my chest gets the brunt of the work.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I've been experimenting with it a little bit as well because I find, yeah, once I get beyond, I guess, yeah, over like three quarters through the movement, it's just all triceps for me. And I think, yeah, I might start off doing the set with those full reps and then halfway through, yeah, just gradually reduce. And it looks a bit messy because it's not like it's hard to gauge set numbers, but yeah, I
Yeah.
guess a bit of bodybuilding is about experimenting, isn't it? Really, definitely.
Yeah. I totally feel you on this because that is one of the arguments against length and partials is that lack of standardization.
Right.
But I always come back to I don't want kind of standardization isn't the goal. The goal is
No.
stimulus for the muscle. And so if I can't perfectly standardize it, then I prefer to do that knowing I'm getting a better overall stimulus.
Yeah.
Like I'm not holding my back myself because, oh, I can't perfectly know I'm doing exactly right or exactly the same as last time just for the sake of it. You can get it standardized enough.
Mm,
So similar to you, I'll have like a kind of a range of where I want to get to. And
mm,
then when I can't get it there, depending where I am in my session on the movement in my mesocycle, I'll just
mm.
like milk out as partial a
Right.
partial as I can
Yeah.
kind of get. So the I've been experimenting with just like scapular depression recently for like some of my lat work,
Okay. Yeah.
just to like see if I can get anything more out of it. Just
Mm. Oh,
just
interesting.
just to
Yeah.
kind of destroy that lat as much as possible where it makes sense and feels right.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, going back to like the standardization, that's interesting because I find there are certain movements like a leg press or a pendulum squat where it really messes with my head because there are certain instances where I can eke more reps out definitely, but I need to pause to do so. But then it's like, oh, how do I log that pause? And it's yeah, I like things being in a set way, and yeah, it's a difficult one for us people that like things in order, I guess. But I was gonna say, if you were to zoom out at your like training career as a whole, would you say progression has been relatively linear, or would you say there can you pinpoint a time and where you've made like exponentially more progress?
Really good question. I love it because there is still this general thought that after like 3 or 4 years, you've made like, I don't know, 90% of your
Mm,
natural progress. And I think there's some truth to that. I definitely think you've made a huge amount, and maybe even the majority of your natural gains in those first few years. But there's so much that we continue to learn. For
mm,
example, with range of motion, in terms of like the scientific evidence, it was very much like full run was the way to go. It's like, oh, but when we compare lengthened partials versus short partials, lengthened partials sometimes lead to more growth. Oh, that's interesting. And now there's been so much research going down that route. And so maybe we can slightly optimize and tweak and make it better. And also, we learn our bodies more and more. I at least have for myself. And even sometimes I know on paper what to do, but in practice, I'm maybe not quite nailing it.
mm,
So I definitely had that happen to me as an example where from my 2014 to 2017 seasons, I didn't really improve that much. And I
okay.
think it's because I held myself back I was very obsessed with like P ratios, trying to stay lean and make sure I wasn't in too big of a surplus.
Mm,
And so I was trying, yeah, I mean, the theory goes for those that don't know, the leaner you are, the better partitioning ratio you have. So you partition more of your surplus towards muscle versus fat.
mm,
So long as you're not like stage ready leanness, so long as you're a
yeah.
healthy body fat. And it just doesn't seem like that is true and it got debunked and you can
Mm,
be like way over fat and still have a good partitioning ratio. So once I kind of got over that, so from my 2017 to 2021 season, I really allowed my body weight to go up. I pushed it much more, I was much more assertive with rates of gain, and I pushed my body weight to the highest it had ever been, which was like
yeah.
205 pounds almost. I don't think I quite touched that, which is really heavy for me. I think previously the heaviest I'd ever got was 190,
Yeah.
and that was before I ever competed. So I never allowed my weight to go up after that first time I was stepping on stage. Probably
Yeah.
slightly like everyone's perception of what lean is gets a bit warped after they first step on
Oh, yeah,
stage.
it really does. Yeah.
So I think I was holding on to that a little bit, and I got a bit kind of, I termed it fat phobic, where I was like
Right.
scared to gain body fat. Once I got over myself and I was like, no, I can do better. I actually ended up gaining almost 10 pounds of stage weight between 2017 to 2021.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
Whereas before 2014 to 2017, I mean, I was a bit leaner at similar stage weights, so I didn't really make that much progress.
Hmm.
So in theory, deeper into my career, less muscle to gain, but actually I
Hmm.
gained more because my process was better. So it for me, it definitely hasn't been. If you zoom out, it
Yeah.
looks linear, but when you
Yeah.
look into like certain segments of my career,
Mm.
I've definitely had growth spurts. So I'm hoping I find another one of those
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I need to now, especially in the fucking pro ranks,
Yeah,
the
no,
people like
exactly.
Babacar.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, that's a really cool answer. I love that. I was going to ask on the flip side of that, have there been any training styles or methods that you thought would work but didn't? And I suppose you've answered it with that, maybe trying to stay a bit too lean in the off season.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
definitely one.
Yeah.
And I would say I almost, I think listening to myself and, as I said, using my building intuition and growing that has really, really helped me in the last years,
Hmm.
where I sometimes would outsource that. So,
Right.
for example, I got very close with Mike Israetel, and I am still close with him, and I really respect him, and he's been incredible for the industry as a whole, I think.
Mm.
But I maybe was to a fault following advice I thought I was executing well, but wasn't quite doing it correctly, if that makes sense,
Right.
where I was potentially leaving too much in the tank, training a
Mm.
bit too easy and trying to chase too much volume. And I'd end up just trying to make up for a lack of intensity with volume. And
Mm.
obviously, you have that debate. And I think most reasonable individuals realize there's like you need an element of both. There's
Yeah.
not one that is the key. It's both together at the right level. And I was definitely too far in that like volume camp. And I needed to bring the intent and intensity. And that's something I've definitely changed over the last 5 years probably, where I've really started
Right.
to train. I don't train everything to failure. I actually very rarely like truly fail a lot of compound lifts, but
Mm.
I'll take it way closer
Hmm.
more regularly and really push the limits because I do think, especially for a natural, that's important.
Mm.
And I think we just recover from it way easier than like enhanced guys who are so strong,
Yeah.
whereas their connective tissue and things like this might not be as strong. Whereas naturals can we're not pushing the poundages that these other guys are.
No.
We're not adapting as quickly, so I think it is important to really push yourself. So yeah, that's something that didn't work was just
Yeah.
like trying to make up, well, trying to just more is better type of mentality. And I think that more is better forgets kind of all the things that it could take away from in terms of the quality of your execution and intensity. So
Yeah.
that, yeah, that didn't pan out for me.
Right, right. Oh, that's an amazing answer. Yeah, no, that really is true. Yeah, train with intent. Yeah, so important. I wanted to touch a little bit about just bodybuilding specifically and get some insights from like a judge's and a competitor's perspective. So obviously you've been both. I remember hearing you on a podcast. I think it was with Andrew Chappelle, who he was my opposing coach last year actually, and yeah, we had some amazing sessions together. And you guys, I think yeah, you mentioned something that really stuck with me. So when judging the symmetry round of bodybuilding, you tend to look at the body as a whole, and you pay less attention to the details, so muscularity, separation, etc. How much do you feel athletes can impact that kind of general silhouette, or do you think genetics is something that plays more of a role?
Such a good question. So we are definitely dealt a deck of cards,
Mm.
and it is how you play with those. So you can play better, but you only have the deck that you're given. So what I'd say by that is, I have joked before that you could just give me people's clavicle and waist ratio, and I would be able to kind of be like, give an idea of where they're going to place. Because if you're broad shoulders, small waist, hey, you've got kind of that X frame almost just by birth. You'll sometimes see some I guess, on social media, you'll see some like kids almost, and you're
Mm.
just like, you're so broad with such a small waist. If you
Mm.
just pack on some muscle, like your symmetry is just gonna be incredible.
Yeah.
But symmetry isn't just bone structure; it's also how are those muscles on you. So, for example, for me, I don't have sweeping quads; they kind of jut out. So I
Right.
don't have
Yeah.
small legs, but they don't look. almost as big, but they don't look as flowy and nice as like someone who has like Dan, who you've had on the podcast, Sutcliffe, like
Mm,
amazing quads. Like he's almost got the best quads you could hope for.
yeah.
And he's got a nice small waist, broad shoulders, very capped delts. His symmetry is just like, oof, that's why he's
Mm,
so good. So yeah, some people unfortunately will have a wider waist, narrower shoulders, and they won't have these sweeping quads. They will have less cap delts,
yeah.
and you can impact that by, and like for me, symmetry's been like it's been my Achilles heel. It's my weakest thing, but I have improved it. And so I just focused on, hey, pack as much size onto those side delts as possible. They're
Mm,
never going to pop like some people's do.
mm,
Like, yeah, there's loads of people who have nice popping delts,
mm-hmm.
but I can make them bigger, thicker. Same with my legs. I'm never going to have a nice quad sweep, but I can make
Yeah.
the quads bigger. I can make sure to fill in my adductors there so that they're nice and present. I can stand a bit wider, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then posing, as you mentioned
Mm,
with Andrew, posing can make a huge difference. So I know in 2021, I didn't pose the best for my symmetry and my shape
right, right.
because I don't know why, but I reverted from pushing my hips back to kind of having them more forward.
Okay.
And I was trying to like tweak and have different foot positions. It just
Mm,
didn't pay off. I didn't really have an understanding of symmetry at that point as the way I do now. I'm
mm,
like, hey, symmetry is quite literally like you want X frame. That's kind of what you're looking for a bodybuilder. And obviously symmetry in terms of like you don't want your quads to be twice the size of like your upper
mm,
body kind of
yeah.
comparatively, what have you. So you want to be quite symmetrical left to right, top to bottom. But that X frame is really what we're looking for. So hips want to be pushed back because if they're further away, they're going to look
Mm,
smaller. And then you want to bring your chest like up and forward and kind of pronounce that nicely. So you can definitely kind of play with your deck of cards better and
yeah.
you can almost improve that deck of cards by building upon your canvas.
Mm,
But structure and genetics are huge within bodybuilding. Anyone who likes to discount them, I
mm,
don't understand it really.
mm,
They just play such a huge role in every sport and it's everything in life. But
yeah.
the great thing is, I'm a great example of, despite not having the best structure, maybe
Mm,
not the best genetics for symmetry,
yeah.
still being able to kind of modify what I have and play well to be able to not let it prevent me from excelling in the sport.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, they're really, really cool. I love that. And it's so true with the hips as well. That was a game changer for me, just getting my hips back. And it wasn't for me the reason for doing it was because my sartorius weren't coming out properly, you weren't popping. And I know I was lean enough. But again, as soon as I got the hips back, they just seemed to just come out completely. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was a game changer for me. So yeah.
Yeah, the sartorius really pops with like the hip flexors and everything really switch on when you push the hips back. So
Yeah.
even if you have a small waist, you still probably want to have a slight hips back. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you said with the symmetry round, as a judge, I kind of view it as you're trying to just look at the silhouette versus
Mm,
anything. But you do need to come in with like a credible amount of condition, even
yeah.
to do
Yeah.
well in symmetry. Because if
Mhm.
some people can have really good symmetry despite not having much condition at all,
Yeah.
but they get somewhat discounted because they're so far off the mark with condition that you can't score them like first in symmetry and then last in
Got
like
it.
condition and muscularity. It just doesn't quite work. So you need a blend of it, but certainly like for example on the rear pose, this is
Mm.
something this is the opinion I hold on it. I don't think it's always going to stand true for everyone, but because in the WNBF we do judge symmetry and muscularity and condition separately,
Right. Right.
on a rear relaxed, I think it makes sense to push the hips back because
Right.
that helps with the X frame. It
Mm.
makes things look more symmetrical versus when you push your hips forward and through, which might show off the glutes if you have the
Mm.
condition for it. Some people might decide to push them forward just because they are banky on some judges having a bit of a bias towards that and it being a bit flashy.
I
And I think
see.
it works for maybe someone like Dirk, who just has the craziest glutes.
Yeah.
But for me, I struggled to get those rear lines fully through. So it actually just made me look really straight and narrow when I push my hips through. So
Right.
pushing them back is something I always do. And yeah, I mean, I'd have to ask the judges when they judge me if they think that's a
Mm.
wise move. But as a judge, I think that's probably smart. So
Yeah.
it's things like that, which when you respect the judging criteria, you have an understanding of it, you
Mm.
can kind of play it with your posing.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And I guess it is really individual, isn't it? Everyone is just built slightly different. And yeah, then that makes a ton of sense. I want to chat a little bit about self-doubt. This is something I've been thinking about a little bit recently. So I've been training for like 24 years now, which is kind of ridiculous, really. It's such a long time. And I must admit, when it comes to assessing my own physique, I'm extremely self-critical. I think I've got decent genetics, but yeah, my feelings when judging myself range from like neutral to just flat out negative. Yeah, I'm quite self-critical. I might sometimes catch a glimpse of my arm and think, oh, I look like I actually lift. But generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of how I look generally. How common do you think like self-doubt is in bodybuilding generally? And is it something you've had to contend with at all?
Great question. And I would agree. I think you're a great bodybuilder, Anthony. Like you've
Oh,
done
cheers.
well for good reason because you
Mm,
have good muscularity, you come well conditioned, you have good symmetry. Like, hey, like you definitely are there.
yeah.
And so I do think you should feel good about your physique, but often we compare ourselves against like what we see online or
Mm,
hey, the person who's ahead of us. And I think that can be negative. It can also be productive. So, because I've actually said it myself, and people do say like comparison is the thief of joy. I
mm,
don't think it has to be. I think you can use it to your advantage. So you can look at other people, and I can look at like a Babacar and be like, oh, I feel terrible because I look so bad next to him. Or I can look at him and be like, wow, look at what's achievable. Look
yeah.
at what can be done. That's inspirational. Look how hard he works. Look how heavy he lifts. Like the
Mm,
fact that we can do that as a natural is just like mind blowing. So I kind of use it hopefully as an advantage in that way, but
yeah.
it's certainly taken me, and I still catch myself now and then seeing certain poses, and I'm just like, dude, you look terrible.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so, like for my front relaxed is a key one. It's something I've had so much self-doubt about. I know I still wasn't sure until I managed to go pro whether or not it would be of a standard that would stop me going pro. I thought it was that bad that I'd just never get there.
Right, right.
And so, what's helped me is comparing to myself,
Yeah.
first of all, and especially comparing to my past self. So, I'll look at photos from like 2021 and compare stage photos to this season and be like, wow,
Mm,
there's some real change there. You should be really proud of that. And
mm,
that helps. So, yeah, I get self-doubt in
mm.
so many areas of life quite often.
Right, right, right.
And I think it helps a lot of bodybuilders though, because
Mm.
I think it probably you could say this, Anthony, for yourself. Like it drives you to want to be better.
Yeah.
It can drive you into a hole and you can give up, or you can be like, hey, yeah, I'm not happy with this. Let's make it better. And
Mm,
so I think, yeah, there's some bodybuilders have a healthy ego, some have too much
mm,
ego, and some
mm-hmm,
of us need to like have people like a coach in our corner, like hype us up a little bit, like, no, you're good.
mm,
Because you can, I've definitely been kind of self-critical and underconfident to a fault where I think
right.
it can harm some of your results and your performance sometimes.
Mm,
The more I learn about the power of the mind and like self-belief,
mm,
the more I'm like, man, almost like an ignorant level of self-belief is
mm-hmm,
really powerful for what it can
mm,
do for people. So I don't want to discount that. And so I've become more open-minded to that. Trying to say I'm very rational, but also open-minded to, hey, there could be something like more there, and don't
mm.
give up. Do your best efforts, you'll get the best results you can. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No,
yeah,
that
I
does.
struggle with it too.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. That's a really, really cool answer. Yeah, it reminds me of something Christian said back on like when I first, I think it was maybe in the second episode, and he said, "You've always got to have that mentality of you're going to try and beat those other guys, even if you're not going to." And that's yeah, and I kind of agree that you have to try and know you're going to improve. You have to have that mentality. So I will be better. I will be better. And I think yeah, you're right. That can spur you on. Absolutely. So yeah, yeah. No, that's a really cool answer. I love that. I love that. What advice would you give to people who are dealing with that generally?
So, yeah, that's a good question. What would I tell old Steve?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think I actually have this quite often with clients, to be fair, where they have this self-doubt. They'll be like, am I getting stronger? Am I getting better? And I tend to get them to try and focus less on the outcome and more on the process and be like, if you're really confident that you're taking all the steps you need to be getting better and improving, then there's no doubt that you are. Like you will be. Are you confident your program is productive for hypertrophy? Are you confident you're meeting your protein and gaining steadily weight over time? If you're confident in these elements and your process is really good, the results are inevitable and it's just time and you have to wait.
Mm,
And the more you can fall in love with that process, the more you'll look back in like a few months' time and be like, oh, wow, look where I am now. Like that's
mm,
incredible. It's kind of the same. I don't know if you're in a certain job or career, or even you're investing in the stock market, for example, and like the S&P
Mm,
500, if you check every day,
mm,
you'll be like, man, is it really improving? It's not going very far.
mm.
But then you check and like, I don't know, you leave it for 10 years and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, look at all this like cumulative interest that I've been able to gain and how much money I've got. It's like, oh, okay, if I just like let go of obsessing about the outcome all the time, focus on the process, doing what I need to do to get it done, that's going to help a lot. I
Mm,
don't think you want blind trust though. You need to
right.
assess every now and then, but at appropriate time courses. So for you and me, Anthony, there's no point checking our physique every
Mm,
week. Like
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, oh, have I gained there? It's like
Yeah.
probably just got a bit fatter, maybe. I don't
Mm,
know, like what's going
pretty
on.
much. Yeah. Yeah.
But and similar with our training, there's no point being like, oh, I've hit a PR this week.
Mm,
But over the course of months, we should hopefully have maybe hit a PR, like got an extra rep here or there,
mm,
and maybe our physique we put on weight, so we know we've been in a surplus, so we're fueling that performance and muscle growth process, so we can be pretty confident in that regard. And then maybe in another 6 months, we've done a little diet, and then we can compare similar body weights, photos, and be like, oh, look, like I've got a little bit more padding here, my shape looks a little bit better.
mm.
But yeah, once you're 10 years deep plus 25 almost years deep for you, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
do have to almost have a bit of blind trust and just really enjoy what you're doing
Yeah.
because it is that slow of a game.
Mm,
And you almost sometimes don't know until you next compete and you get
mm,
stage photos or what have you.
yeah.
But I will say, like anyone who puts forth really good efforts towards this and is challenging their like physique, I think results are inevitable.
Mm,
So long as you know you're doing that, like you can have real good confidence that things are going in the right direction.
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, no, really cool. I mean, I'm hopeful that results will continue in my 40s. I've been doing this a long
Hell yeah.
time, but yeah, yeah. Like I said before, like, a lot of my years weren't the most productive. So I know there's more juice to be squeezed. So I'm hopeful. I see, Jeff Alberts can do it. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's a
so,
big inspiration. Like
yeah,
he's
crazy.
52, 53,
53, I
and
think. Yeah.
like he's had in recent years better performances than when he was in his 30s. So
Yeah, and it's really is amazing. Obviously, I was going to touch on your judging experience, if that's okay, Steve. Obviously, you judged at the Supernaturals this year, in which I competed at, and you've obviously judged at previous shows. From a judge's perspective, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see athletes make?
great question. I think one that comes immediately to mind, and this is funny. This comes back to your question of symmetry and how much can we play with.
Yeah,
It's a really simple one, but it's practical, and I think people will like it who maybe have made this error. Posing trunks. So
right.
one thing is not wearing them a bit higher on the hips. So you want them basically on top of your hip bones.
Yeah.
So that it gives you almost this slingshot effect.
Mm,
Because if you wear them just like, I don't know, Calvin Klein's flat
mm,
type of deal, just like your boxer top,
yeah.
uh, it doesn't give you that nice illusion. Again, this is like the art and the smoke and mirrors of bodybuilding is you're
Mm,
trying to give that illusion of shape. And so definitely pulling those up so you have this nice like effect
yeah.
and that will help your symmetry. And even with posing trunks is picking the right style for your frame. And I
Mm,
can't tell you if you have like it's not like even though these are made up, right? Well, not made up, but ectomorph, mesomorph type of deal. Like they're not semantic types aren't like necessarily scientifically based, but
yeah.
I can't say if you're this shape, you should wear this style of posing trunk. But there are
Yeah.
just you've probably I don't know how many posing trunks do you own, Anthony?
I bought three pairs for my last season,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to, I wanted to go all out and just try some different colors, different materials,
Yeah.
and yeah, the same thing. Yeah, so Andy recommended that I also pull them up, and yeah, it's a game changer, especially because I've got quite short legs as well. So if I had them low, my legs would look even shorter, and my upper body would look far too big. So yeah, the kind of making them into a V shape really helped for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and good ones should already have that kind of inbuilt in them, but you
Yeah,
can still emphasize or do a better job by having them hiked up a little bit.
yeah,
And like I've noticed, I don't know if you found you had a favorite pair where you're just like, they
yeah.
just look best.
I
Yeah,
did.
there
Yeah,
you go.
yeah.
I think a lot of us have like a favorite pair, and I found myself, I think I competed in the same pair every show I did that last season because I was just like,
Mm,
the other ones just don't look as good. I
mm,
bought a new pair as well. I bought the same that Dirk has because I
right.
was like, Dirk's just look really good on him.
Yeah.
On me, they look real bad. I don't know what it
Right.
is. Like it's some of the structure. They have a bit of a V on the back side too, as
Right.
well as
Right.
the front. And it just didn't look right on me at all.
Mm,
So yeah, posing trunks, attire, that sort of thing.
mm,
Get that right. Basics of tanning. Having
Mm.
a good tan can make them or break like results. It just
Mm.
can. If it's not done to a good standard, if it's like smudged, if it's just like there's if it's patchy, that's not going to help. So I always just tend to go with the professional tanners because I'm
Yeah.
like, most people are getting that done. So at least I'm on a level with most people. And
Mm.
I'm always careful of prepping my skin beforehand. So just making sure to exfoliate somewhat the days and weeks prior, moisturize so the skin's in a good position to take
Mm.
that on. These are little things that they actually do carry over to stage quite strongly, and I
Right.
think some people don't consider them. Hair removal. It's a mistake I
Mm.
made for my first show. Is I had hairy
Mm.
armpits, and
Right.
I
Right.
got told I was judged down for that. So,
Right. Well.
and it doesn't look great actually. As a judge, I've seen people come on stage with like hair that maybe shouldn't be there, like
Mm.
men's physique having hairy legs. Yeah, I know maybe we're not judging the legs
Mm.
as strongly as the upper body, but should be removed. But even like presentation in terms of, I don't know, if your hair's really messy all over up top
Mm.
or whatever, it's not something I judge, but I
Mm.
can't help to think some of those subjective things could play a role, especially
Mm.
in men's physique and a kind of bikini where presentation's a bit more of a thing. So just kind of come in, like, you don't have to have like, go to a makeup artist or anything. You just want to look presentable in that
Yeah.
sense. And then stage presence. So again,
Right.
an easy win is just looking like you want to be there. As Christian said, looking like you're competitive and you've not given
Mm.
up. You want to have good energy on stage and look like you're enjoying yourself up there.
Mm.
Because, yeah, I've seen people and competitors and good ones almost look sometimes angry,
Right. Right.
sometimes like just like they don't want to be there. And again, not that I'm judging that, but I think subjectively, you're just not as happy looking at that person. It just doesn't draw you to them. And it sometimes can be small points between people. So if you could be like
Yeah.
that energetic, smiley person on stage and you just draw the attention, it might
Mm.
just land in your favor that way. So
Yeah.
that's an easy one to go for as well. It's just bringing good energy to stage. And then, as we've mentioned already, posing.
Mm.
So I could tell with you, Anthony, you've done your homework.
Mm.
Not only were you hitting the poses well, getting into them timely, but you were holding them and weren't losing kind of your composure
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like sweating buckets or
Yeah. Yeah.
like I don't know, looking bloated on stage because you can't hold your abdominals in or your quads are turning off or anything like that. You want
Mm.
to be able to have practiced your posing, practice endurance, hold for a long period of
Mm.
time. So you're almost nice and stoic
Yeah.
on stage and almost like a kind of a Greek
Mm.
statuesque in a sense.
Yeah.
That'll go a long, long way. And posing correctly for the criteria, but also for your class, of course. So read the rule book ahead of time so you know what you should be doing. That'll go a long way. Um, Anything else? And then I would just say for bodybuilding specifically, because that's my class, like
Mm.
come in conditioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you I can't see your muscles, I can't judge them. So if I
Mm.
can't see quad separation, it's hard to judge the quads because
Yeah.
I can't see the details there. So that goes a long, long way. But
Yeah.
it also, as we mentioned at the start with my own journey, it isn't a shredded glute show.
Mm.
So if you find chasing that condition is leading to taking away from other elements of your physique, it probably isn't worth it. It
Yeah.
might be worth just holding and like trying to build like fullness and good gym performance and feeling a little bit livelier and that
Mm.
sort of thing. So there's some of the things that come to mind when I think of
Yeah.
judging and kind of being on stage.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, I love that, especially the things that, yeah, because I'm things like posing trust, a lot of people will just overlook, I imagine. So yeah, those things are, yeah, they
Or
are key, aren't they?
wearing classic bodybuilding trunks for like open bodybuilding, and I'm just
Right,
like,
right. Oh, does that happen?
on
Right.
sometimes, and I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
judge your glutes now.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're kind of hidden. So
yeah, yeah. I might have to hide mine in the future because then, yeah, it's my Achilles heel is my glutes, I think. But yeah, yeah, I won't really hide them, but yeah, yeah.
well,
That's
classic is now it's an option in the WMBF now.
it
It's
is.
just come
I
in. I
know.
don't know if you saw. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously I won the golden year round, didn't I, in the
Yes.
Masters? But yeah, I'm not sure I have the right look for classic. But yeah, it intrigues me. The whole idea of classic does intrigue me. It's a bit of an
Yeah.
argument actually. I actually asked Mark Willits, who's a classic champion. He said I asked him a bit of a like, pushback because some people believe there's not really a need for a classic division, being that bodybuilding is classic by its very nature, natural bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's what are your thoughts on that, Steve?
You know what? I'm a bit torn
Mm,
because I know why classic came. When I think about why classic came into the IFBB, it was so that people had kind of a quote unquote healthier option, so they didn't
Yeah.
have to be as big and freaky. Whereas for naturals, we don't have that issue of it's not unhealthier to be in open bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Like being as big and freaky as you can is kind of like the name of the game. So I don't see the same need for it.
Mm.
However, the reason I'm taught, so I'm because classic is arguably more popular than
Yeah.
open. I think it's going to do something like men's physique will for bodybuilding as a whole. It's just going to bring in more people.
Mm.
So if you can do it as like, for example, in the Netherlands, they actually had classic, but they said you can only do classic if you enter one of the open categories.
Oh, right. I
So
see.
I think so long as they make sure it doesn't take away from the open bodybuilding side and things like this, I think it could just draw more people to natural bodybuilding. And I
Mm.
think so for the sport as a whole, I understand it. Do I think it's needed? No. Like, I don't think it totally fundamentally maybe makes sense. I'd be interested to know what the judging criteria is because we don't have that just yet.
Mm.
That might change things. So if they're looking for a softer look or like it's clearly different to open,
Mm.
then fair enough. But classic to open in the enhanced side isn't. It's
No.
shredded. They wear
Yeah.
different trunks, but they still show off their glutes, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested by it, but I think it will be a good thing for natural bodybuilding as a whole. So I'm not
Yeah.
against it. I just don't necessarily know if it's needed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. Really cool nuanced answer there. Yeah. I like that. Um, I wanted to ask as well, what are some of the things that bodybuilders probably don't pay enough attention to during a contest prep?
Oh, nice question. What don't they pay enough attention to? Huh. It's funny because I think about bodybuilders and contest prep, and sometimes I think we pay too much attention
Yeah,
to
to
everything.
everything. Yeah, yeah. No,
Like
definitely.
every small thing, we just need to chill out a little bit and be like,
Yeah.
hey, it's okay. Uh, what don't they pay enough attention to? Immediately, my mind comes to peak week. And again, maybe paying too much attention in some respects in terms
Right.
of like, oh, it's going to be this kind of game changer or what have you. But there can be a lack of attention in peak week too.
Right.
So if people aren't thinking about the foods they're eating, if they suddenly change all of them because they're like, oh, I'm on higher calories, I can include some of this like, don't know, XYZ that I haven't eaten in ages, but now I have the calories for it. You
Mm,
just don't want to introduce something different during that period of time.
right.
And then also with like their electrolyte and fluids, I don't know if some bodybuilders just don't consider that at all. And I think some can get away with it, but it
Mm,
can definitely play a big role, especially if you're dehydrated. That's not a good idea.
yeah.
So I definitely think making sure to be hydrated and doing that is wise. Okay, actually, this will be it. So caffeine. Not
Right.
enough people
Okay.
pay attention to caffeine and how much their total is adding up for the day. I
Yeah.
think about some bodybuilders, they do a monster, they do a pre-workout, they do their black coffees, they maybe do like a fat burner, and then they do like, I don't know, some diet Pepsi or Coke or what have you. And suddenly their caffeine is like, could be 1,000 milligrams a day, which is, it's been seen in the research that bodybuilders have gone that high,
Yeah.
which it's actually quite easy to do if you're not paying attention to it. And as you know, Anthony, probably like that's just going to crush your sleep. And that's the thing you got to pay attention to almost as much as your training and nutrition is sleep and the quality of sleep.
Yeah.
That's been a huge game changer for me, not just off season, but also comp prep is taking care of sleep and making sure it's of
Mm,
a standard. You don't have to get obsessive about it, and you can take it too far for
yeah.
sure. But just being aware of your caffeine, I think, is huge for some people.
Yeah.
So I
That's a
tried to
great
keep
answer.
mine, I think I tried to keep it below 300 milligrams a day. I wouldn't let it
Mm,
get above that. And
yeah.
if possible, like 2 milligrams per kilo is where I like it to be,
Yeah.
which is not high at all.
No, no. Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, I imagine that is very overlooked. Um, yeah, no, I love that. That's really cool. Um, I was going to ask as well, Steve. So, what were some of the most valuable lessons you've learned over this, over your period of trading, let's say?
Oh, good question. Uh, I would say I come back to that. It's it comes back to the saying of people often overestimate how much they can achieve in a short period of time, but underestimate how much they could achieve in a long period of time.
Mm,
So I think when I first started kind of bodybuilding and competing, and certainly I remember talking to some friends, I remember specifically one friend, he was like 220 pounds or something.
mm,
And he was like, I know if I chop off 20 pounds, I'm going to be like, I forget who it was. It was a fitness model at the time. I'm basically wanted to look like this fitness model.
yeah,
It was like Steve Cook.
yeah,
He was like, I'm going to be Steve Cook, but he's 180 pounds. So I'll be 200 pounds as lean as Steve Cook. He lost the 20 pounds and he was like, man, I've got another like 20, at least another 20 pounds to go. He lost another
Right.
20 pounds. He's like, don't look anything like Steve Cook.
Right. Right.
And so I think at the start, I was kind of overestimating, like, and my friends were, what we could achieve in a short period of time. Almost like I thought I could be Ronnie Coleman at some point. Like, you
Mm.
just believe that you can. But once I realized that wasn't going to happen, I kind of got a bit upset and a bit demotivated. I'd look at like a Matt Ogus and I doubt he was natural. But then I
Mm.
kept going, kept doing the thing. And then I was like, Matt's definitely natural. And there are better naturals than Matt. I
Mm.
just hadn't been doing this long enough and seen
Yeah.
it through. And again, it's only I mean, I still can't quite believe it that I've managed to turn pro as a natural, like it as in the WNBF. I wouldn't have believed that in like 2017. There's no
Mm.
way I would have believed I could have turned pro. So yeah, I come back to, especially for bodybuilding, it's kind of delayed gratification
Mm.
personified, I always say
Yeah.
it kind of teaches you that it's like if you keep going at something, it's not that you can be anything. Like I'm not going to be Babacar in the kind of or Rolling Coleman or like
Mm.
the world's best pro, but I can take it really far.
Mm.
And if you put in above average efforts for an above average length of time, you're going to be above average. It's guaranteed by the very nature of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a nice kind of lesson and reminder for myself at least. I can probably think of loads, but that's the one that's
Mm.
come to the top of
Right. I
mind.
love that. Yeah, that's a really, really cool answer. Yeah, no, I can completely agree as well. And like you say, I think a lot of the lessons you learn in bodybuilding do translate into that one specifically translates into everyday life too. So yeah, that's really, really
Yeah.
cool. I wasn't planning on asking you this, but it's something I've been thinking about a little bit is the kind of people that bodybuilding attracts, like the kind of personality types. And it's something I asked AJ as well. You've obviously coached a number of different athletes, both to the stage and just kind of general population. Do you think bodybuilding attracts a certain type of person, Steve? Like the regimented? I know it sounds really obvious, but in your experience, does it attract a particular type of person?
I think it attracts initially a lot of different personality types,
Right.
but the ones that stick, who don't just do like one competitive season, the ones that are the most competitive, I tend to find on average, because I've listened to some like genetic freaks and like highly competitive pros who I do not relate to at all in how they
Right.
approach the gym. They're almost very laissez-faire about it. Like they don't have to try too hard. It sounds like that sounds bad. I think they try really hard, but they don't think as hard, maybe. It just kind
Right.
of has come to them a bit more naturally and intuitively. But I find for a lot of us more like bare bones bodybuilders who aren't as blessed have really had to think a lot about it. And so I do find there becomes like an obsession with the process for a lot of us and just they fall in love with the daily grind
Mm.
of it. And there's just something really fun and enjoyable about not just doing the do, but also assessing it and
Mm.
adjusting and analyzing it. And like you said, that structure and routine, like
Mm.
we love structure and routine and we thrive off that. So I see sometimes people when I've coached people that come into it and they really struggle with structure and routine, like
Right.
tracking their macros is like a big ask. Those
Mm.
people I don't tend find like are very successful or
Right.
do it for extended periods of time. The people that tracking the macros is like brushing their teeth.
Mm.
It's almost de-stressing to have that element of control. It gives them freedom. They're the ones that I find tend to stick around a little bit longer, where they actually just find like they almost find we're not we enjoy our food, but not we almost enjoy knowing it's productive towards our goal, so we can
Yeah.
find like foods that are complementary to that.
Mm.
So we're kind of extreme in one nature, but can balance it within our own lifestyles and find that structure and diligence enjoyable and not a pain and hassle type of thing, if that makes sense.
That does. Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. That's a really cool answer. Love that. Um, I wanted to ask Steve the most important question, the Ninja Creamy.
Oh
How is
yeah.
it? I'm thinking of getting one. Sell it to me. Are they any good?
Do you like Halo Top?
I do, and that's the thing. I love them,
Okay.
but paying £5 for an ice cream, I think this is just ludicrous every time. I do love them.
So this is my selling now.
Yeah,
So you could for a scoop, like a cup of milk, maybe a little bit of a banana, or some people put in xanthan gum as like an emulsifier.
yeah,
You can basically get yourself a Halo Top equivalent for like, I don't know, half the cost, less than half the
right.
cost.
Okay.
So you're saving money after you've used it X number of times. So now
Mm,
you have no reason not to get it.
yeah, okay, that's
Uh,
cool. Yeah, love it. What are the healthy ones? Because you can mix whey protein and things like that with them. Do they come out right?
So at least for me, this I'll tell you a story because it tells you how obsessed I am with it.
Right.
So basically, I got it and I started using it every since I started using it, I had it every single night basically. And I don't know how long I'd had it at this point, but it was during prep. Had it maybe a month. And there was one day I'd already made, you have to like freeze the container beforehand.
Right.
So for me, it's like a scoop of protein, 250 mils of skim milk, and like half a banana or a whole banana. That's like my base that makes like a good ice cream.
Mm.
Maybe add a bit more sweetener, like some Flav drops, if you know those from my
Yeah, yeah,
protein.
yeah.
Just, yeah, it has to be quite sweet. For some reason, it loses quite a bit of sweetness when you freeze it for whatever reason.
Right.
But anyway, that's like my base. So I'd made that. But then in the day, I was just curious. We hadn't had it that long. I was like, I asked Charlotte, can I just put in strawberries and just like chuck that in there and maybe have like a bit of a what's it called, a smoothie or what have you? Not a
Mm.
smoothie. What am I thinking about? A sorbet. That's the one.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, can I do a sorbet? And she was like,
Mm.
yeah, yeah, you can do that. You can't do
Right,
that.
right.
So
Okay.
I basically broke the machine
No. Oh
there and
God.
then doing that.
Right.
But this is how obsessed I am. I was like, but I've programmed in my Ninja Creamy for tonight and I want to have it. So I basically looked up on Argos locally.
Mm.
Is there any that have one available I can go buy and pick up today?
Right,
And
right.
so I ended up walking like 45 minutes to this Argos, picking it up
Mm.
that day and walking it home. And it's like, it's a bit of a hefty piece of kit. It was a
Yeah.
bit awkward, but that just tells you how much I
Okay.
at least got obsessed with it
Yeah,
and
fair
enjoyed
enough.
it. So yeah, I basically have it every single night, and that's
Oh,
the
really?
recipe's the same.
Hmm.
I just you can do mix-ins, which I quite like. So I put in maybe a bit of cereal kind of mixed into it, so for some crunch,
Ah,
or I quite often put in nuts. They
yeah.
work really well in there. So I
Mm.
need to try some of the less kind of quote unquote healthy options.
Right, right.
Like maybe it has like a gelato mode, and I love gelato,
Mm.
but I don't imagine it's going to be as good as like going to Italy or
Yeah.
Rome.
No, no, fair enough. Okay. Yeah, you've convinced me. I think I'll get one when the
They're
weather
not
gets
too
a bit better.
expensive either, actually. They're like
No, no.
surprisingly reasonably priced.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm gonna have to get one this year, definitely. This has been amazing, Steve. Honestly, thank you so much. You've given us some amazing take-home points there. I'm gonna do what I always do, which is some quick-fire questions next. So, what is your favorite film, Steve?
A favorite film? Oh, I should have known these were coming these specific questions
Yeah.
as well, and I should have already like noted down what my favorite film is. Um, what is my favorite film? I think of I. It's funny because like Star Wars, I love,
Mm.
but I don't have one that is just like that is the ultimate one. Maybe Revenge of the Sith, maybe
Okay, episode
starts kind of
three. Yeah,
getting up there. Yeah,
yeah,
episode
yeah.
three,
That's
where
great.
Obi-Wan have their like, you were the
Mm.
chosen
The duel.
one.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
could you? Like all of this. That battle was just like unbelievably epic, and I
yeah,
can rewatch that without kind of getting bored. So yeah, I'm just gonna throw that one as
yeah.
my favorite. That works.
No, that's cool. No, I love it. I love that film as well. I wasn't a big fan of the prequels initially, but they've grown on me over time, and that one in particular is the best, isn't it? Yeah. What's your favorite dieting food?
We spoke about this
We.
off air, didn't we?
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah,
With the oats.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it, it oats is the meal, protein oats specifically,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
think a
for
lot of
sure.
bodybuilders they say oats, but it's like you're not just eating oats on their own or like
Mm,
porridge with water and salt. You mean protein oats.
you mean protein? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so probably that's the meal I look forward to most each
Okay.
day, and I still actually have two of my meals this off season at the moment are protein oats basically.
Mm,
So
yeah,
probably yeah, oats have to
yeah,
be
yeah.
the one.
You can join the club.
Join them.
There's a big list of people. What's your favorite off-season food?
Pizza, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember you were a big
pizza
fan of
is
that back in the day. Yeah.
yeah, still I don't have it enough,
Mm,
and I'm slowly getting to the point now, like I said, 11 weeks, where I'm like I can fit in a pizza much more comfortably than I could before this time. Like I'm
mm,
getting to that when my hunger's a bit more manageable. So haven't had enough pizza this
right.
year.
Yeah. No, you need to get on it. Need to rectify that. Yeah. What are your hobbies outside of bodybuilding, Steve?
Uh, I actually don't have a lot outside of bodybuilding, I'll be honest.
Mm,
It's because of it, it's my career basically.
yeah.
Do the podcast, like content production, like the whole lot. I'm very obsessed with it. But I guess anime and like in conjunction with that, tattoos are kind of like a
Yeah.
bit of a side hobby. Yeah, for those listening that can't see, I've got anime
Mm,
tattoos across my
hmm.
calf, forearms, and I will like enjoy watching an anime of an evening, a few
Okay.
episodes. So yeah, that's probably my biggest. other thing that I do outside of, and that's like a true like traveling, food. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
But
usual,
anime
yeah.
is like it's a bit of a quirk.
Yeah. No, amazing. I love that. It's funny, last year a friend of mine who's really into it as well, he got me into Dragon Ball, so I started watching the original Dragon Ball series from like
Okay.
1989, I think it was. And yeah, I loved it. It was so quirky, so different. But then I stopped. And yeah, the plan was to watch that and then all the Dragon Ball Z, but yeah, I got out of the habit of doing it. But it was
Yeah,
really
Dragon
fun.
Ball Z is that's peak. That's
Is it?
very good. The
Yeah, yeah.
stories, like there's better anime stories, but for gym goers, it's just so hyped.
Yeah, it's very popular with gym goers, isn't it? And I've never
Yeah.
understood why, 'cause I've never seen it. So I need to watch it. Yeah.
The crazy
Um,
physiques, like it's you want to look
okay.
like Goku.
Got it. Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Have you seen the original Dragon Ball?
Yes.
You have,
Not
yeah.
for a
Yeah.
while though.
Yeah.
So you did if you like that, you'll like Z even more because it's just a bit
Mm,
more adult.
yeah, yeah. I did like it. It was fun. Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for your time, Steve. I've really enjoyed this. And yeah, thanks guys for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.